3, 2, 1.
I'm glad to be back, getting to sit down with all of you to pick the brains of another industry veteran. Today we're talking treasuries, bonds, interest rates, and futures trading with George Cavaligos. Now, doesn't that sound fun? George has been an institutional futures broker, and he's worked on the trading floor of the CME exchange for, well, he was telling me decades, several decades. And he started his futures trading career in, I guess, 1980, which is 2 years before I was born, with
Nice.
Drexel Burnham Lambert. And you also may know a guy by the name of Rick Santelli, who used to work with George and for George. So George has been around. He knows a couple of guys. And he's also worked at the now extinct Bear Stearns, I guess, and the big MF Global. We want to welcome George.
All right, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate the introduction, guys. Well, like Jeff was saying, it's kind of a funny road here, but as many people in the trading floor community in Chicago will attest, it's a funny road how most of us start out in the business. My training and background was initially as a high school science teacher. I taught high school biology for a couple of years. And I grew up with a bunch of guys in the city here in Chicago whose families were, well, long-time CBOT or CME families. And that's exactly what the trading floors used to be, were big family groups.
And was that what you wanted to do, teach high school?
Actually, I did want to be a high school science teacher. I've always been interested in the outdoors, farming, like you mentioned. Those types of things attracted me quite a bit. It's a funny story. As most people know, teachers have their summers off. Well, one summer, a good friend of mine whose family had been in the CBOT for many years, in the grains and in the bonds, a young Irish man by, by ancestry, knew that I was looking for a summer job because I had my summer vacation from school off. And he invited me to come down to the Board of Trade floor and become a runner, one of the clerical positions in the old days where written commodity orders, buys, sells, stops, the orders would be taken at a desk and written down on paper, and then it was the runner's job to grab that order from the desk and run it to the proper pit and give it to the proper broker, who would then either execute that order or put it into his order book. Well, I started out as a teacher in 1980. I think I was making a little bit over $11,000 as a full-time teacher. And I think I was the head cross-country coach, the assistant track coach, and if there were any other openings, like driving the bus, I probably would have taken that too. It wasn't a lot of money. So I started out with a summer job on the Board of Trade floor as a runner. And after my first summer down there, I went back to teaching. And I was teaching at a high school in the suburbs of Chicago, and things were getting, I don't want to say dicey, but the enrollment was dropping, and they wanted me to move down to the junior high school level. I spent 1 week at the junior high school level before I realized that I had to get out of there, or I was going to probably do bodily harm on some of those ill-mannered junior high school kids. So I called my friend back at the Board of Trade, and he ended up hiring me back. So I went back down to the Board of Trade floor, became a phone clerk, making, I think, to start about $17,000 as a phone clerk slash runner, basically entry-level job, making more money than I was as a teacher, and only working from, what were the grain market hours? I think it was 9 o'clock to 1:15. And then you had the rest of the day off. I ended up working other jobs because it was almost like a part-time job, but I was making more money as a runner and a clerk than I was as a teacher. So I started my career down there. I was working with Drexel Burnham Lambert, another famous name. You guys are going to love my resume. I've got more companies that have gone out of business over the last 30 years on my resume than I care to think about at this point.
Hey, but you're still around, so that's the good part, right?
Still around, a lot of scars and nicks and cuts and stuff over the years, but I'm still here. It's been an interesting life. I started out down there on the trading floor, basically, worked my way up from the bottom rung of the ladder as a runner and a phone clerk. Worked in the back office. One of the sales guys at Drexel then brought me on as his sales assistant, and I was working on the trading floor for one of the sales guys on the floor at Drexel, and really enjoyed what I was doing. And I guess I learned, I started out learning that my boss handed me the Wall Street Journal, and he said, "Here, read this every day," because he knew I didn't know much about the markets. And he handed me the Wall Street Journal and said, "Read this from cover to cover every day." And I started out that way learning, and I took some classes. The Board of Trade and the CME and still do, have tremendous education offices. I took a lot of the classes. I actually took all the classes at the time that the CBOT offered and the CME offered, and I moved my way up the ladder. By 1984, I was running Drexel Burnham Lambert's Eurodollar futures desk, which was a new desk. It was a great opportunity. The Eurodollar market is, I'm sure most people that are watching this would know what a Eurodollar deposit is, but it became, over the next decade and a half, the biggest futures contract on a volume basis in the world.
Yeah. What did running a desk like that entail? How did you step into that role and figure out something that was just starting out?
Well, I learned my way up the ladder, first as a sales assistant, became a salesman where I was calling on institutional customers, banks, insurance companies, some of the in-house traders at Drexel, covering those guys, telling them what was going on in the markets, what was important and what was pertinent to what was happening in the market. Mm-hmm. And managing the other sales assistants and other salespeople on the desk. Started out with, I think, 3 or 4 of us on the desk, and by the time 1990 came rolling around, when Drexel met its untimely demise, I think we had a big desk. I think there were 11 salespeople and clerks, including myself, on the desk. And it was a pretty nice business to be in. The market was growing by leaps and bounds at that point. The financial derivatives, the financial futures markets were expanding tremendously, not just here in the States, but globally too. Started dealing with a lot of people in different places: Paris, New York, London, Tokyo. And it became more than just a job at that point. It became really a lifestyle where you had to start following the markets overnight. Mm-hmm. Making sure that when things were happening during the off hours, that all the customers were finding out the information that was coming through the pits or through the market. So, over the years, there's been a lot of people that come in and out of the market. Rick Santelli worked with us on the desk at Drexel for many years. We became good friends at that point. We still, we've been to a couple baseball games this year. We don't get together as much. He's obviously very busy. Yeah. Changed, obviously, when Drexel went under. The people that were basically the Drexel Futures Department, we got taken over by a big French bank. It was called Banque IndoSuez at the time. Mm-hmm. They had a small futures division called Carr Futures. And we obviously came in and joined with the Carr Futures people. And we grew that business by leaps and bounds from 1990 until I left Carr Futures in 2001. Last year, I was working with MF Global. Obviously, MF Global met its untimely demise on Halloween of last year. And at that point, I saw the financial markets were shrinking. I had an offer from one of my customers to come and learn to be a full-time trader. at the CTA, at the Novo CTA.
Mm-hmm.
They're a small FX CTA, commodity trading advisor.